Great. Again, welcome everyone. I'm Maura Devine, National Grassroots Manager for Voices for Healthy Kids. I'm thrilled to be here with you and my colleague Laura Coleman. Laura and I today are going to be talking about grassroots and key contacts. Next. So at Voices for Healthy Kids, we use the Power Prism advocacy framework. If you've been on our trainings before, you might be familiar with this. This was created by My Power People, LLC. And the Power Prism framework is a step-by-step plan that will help you recognize and act on opportunities to build momentum in a campaign for change. So today, we're going to talk specifically about the Power Prism tool for grassroots and key contacts. This is a high-level overview, and in future sessions, we'll present more in-depth information about our other Power Prism tools. So we'd love to have time at the end for questions, but in the meantime, while we're speaking and presenting today, feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat. We want you to walk away today with some key concepts about grassroots advocacy and key contexts through the Power Prism model. And we want you to develop a knowledge of steps to take when planning for this advocacy, including how to research to support grassroots advocacy and key contact cultivation. We want you to identify ways to find those grassroots and key contacts and develop methods of engagement and mobilization. At the end, we'll also talk about ways that you can get support from our team. Just as a reminder, you can go to the Power Prism website to find more resources and information about the Power Prism framework. Next. I want to take a minute briefly to talk about equity and racial justice, so it's clear what we're talking about in the presentation. Next. So in conversations about racism, racial equity, and health equity, many terms are used often interchangeably. So you want to be really clear in your language and ensure that you have a good internal grasp of what these concepts mean. These can make your conversations more powerful. Keep in mind that terms mean different things to different people. So when you use a term in a conversation, also describe what you mean. These terms also change over time, and impacted communities may prefer to use different language. So be sure to work with your community coalitions to shape your conversation and inform the terms you use. So I just wanted to briefly go over the definitions that we use here at Voices. Health inequities is the differences in the health status of different population groups. These inequities have significant social and economic costs to both individuals and society. Our definition of racial justice is the systematic fair treatment of people of all races, resulting in equitable opportunities and outcomes for all. Racial justice is the absence of discrimination and inequities and the presence of systems and supports to achieve and sustain racial equity. Next. And this is our definition of racial equity that we use. Racial equity would occur when a person is no more or less likely to experience society's benefits or problems because of skin color. Racial inequity is when two or more racial groups are not standing on approximately equal footing. Racial equity is also described as the condition that would be achieved if one's racial identity no longer predicted how one fares. This includes elimination of policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that reinforce different outcomes predicted by race. So just take a minute as we're moving forward and think about your definitions of these terms, and if you think about them similarly or differently. And you can put that in the chat as well if you'd like. The policy advocacy goals of Voices for Healthy Kids are intended to increase health equity and racial justice. It's critical that campaigns to improve community conditions consistently seek leadership, counsel, guidance, and practical feedback from members of communities intended to benefit from the proposed changes. Next. And here's a good rule for advocating and organizing with equity. I love this slogan. It's been around for quite a long time, centuries even. It's best known as a rallying cry for the disability rights movement that grew out of the work in South Africa in the 1980s. Simply put, this reminds us that no policy should be decided without the full and direct participation of members of the group affected by that policy. Next. Okay, so let's dive in. The first step of building power for your advocacy is answering the 3 key questions. Everything you do in your campaign should be informed and guided by your answers. Next. It is tempting to jump right into methods and strategies, but winning policy change campaigns are those that are guided by these 3 questions. The first is, what do you want? What is the policy change you're seeking to address your issue? The second is, why do you want it? What data make a case for that policy change? And the third is, who has the power to give it to you? Which specific decision makers in state or local government have the power to make that change? The answers to these questions can change throughout a campaign, so it's really helpful to get into the habit of revisiting them regularly. Once you have those answers, it's time to come up with strategies for each of the power tools that will influence decision makers. Let's just pause here for a minute. Take a minute to just write down answers to those. You might already have these at top of mind. If you don't, jot them down and just think about them. If you feel comfortable, feel free to add them to the chat as well. And again, it's okay if you don't have these answers yet, just be thinking about them, write them down, and just think about how you want to define these later. Next. Influencing decision makers is all about making it easier for them to give you what they want. Sorry, what you want. The Power Prism is built on 6 power tools of advocacy that help apply pressure on decision makers to reach our policy goals. So today we're talking about grassroots and key contacts, but the other tools are research and data collection, coalition building and maintenance, fundraising and development, media advocacy, and decision maker advocacy. The way we choose to use each of these power tools can either advance health equity and racial justice, or can uphold the status quo and structural racism. So since we're focusing today on grassroots and key contacts, I just wanted to remind you that every elected official that we vote for is charged with representing people either from a specific district or across the city or state. These public servants are supposed to help government work for us and with us. We all know sometimes that's not the case, but that's the intent. Elected officials are especially keen on appealing to people who live in the district they represent, because those people literally have the power to hire and fire them at election time. Grassroots power, when organized and prepared, can overcome even the most well-funded corporate interests. And I can speak from personal experience that when you have an amazing, well-organized grassroots movement, you truly can make amazing impact in your local community. I'm going to turn it over to Laura, who's going to talk more about research.
Thank you, Mara. As she just previously stated, we're going to talk about research for grassroots and key contexts. Very important part. So what you want to do is research the policy process, right? You're understanding the process for how to change policy in your area. And this is going to help you find and figure out who your grassroots and key contacts are. And if you know the process, you're able to successfully identify key decision makers who will influence you, influence your proposed policy. As Mara stated earlier, that who has the power to give it to you, the key decision makers, legislative districts, timing and important milestones to activate grassroots and your key contacts. Next. So remember that third key question, right? Who has the power to give it to you? And so we want to dig into that a little bit more. Which specific decision makers have the power to make that change? So depending on your area, these decision key makers may be leaders of committees that your legislation may be initially heard in. It could be city council leaders or other decision makers. So you want to say, what groups and organizations are they connected to, right? You want to figure out what is their district or area of representation. Now, while we're going over this, I do believe a lot of you all probably already know some of these specific asks, so you're already on the path to the right way. So next slide. So research for power mapping. So as we talked about earlier, identifying those key decision makers at each step of your bill's process, if it is a bill, it will likely go through several steps. So it isn't just about the leadership of one committee, but probably several. And your bill sponsor can be helpful in letting you know which committees that your bill might be in. So you want to determine that handful of key decision makers at each step of the process. So not just the main person. You also want to reach any possible pathways of influence to those key decision makers, and we'll get into that. And lastly, you want to cross-reference those that are promising those pathways of influence with assets that you and your campaign partners already have. So that can be personal relationships, common interests, donors, and more. Next. So your community voices. So it's very critical for all campaigns to pause and make sure there is community voice in any policy work intended to solve issues within those communities, from the time that the idea begins and through its implementation and evaluation. And you'll learn, if you have not already, that there are a lot more people that are willing to be a voice for the community and just share their stories than they may initially let off. So it's very important that we do not overlook it when we're doing campaign planning in every capacity building opportunity. All campaigns must take that pause to make sure they have community voices and make sure they begin to transfer power to the people that are going to be mostly impacted. And I love this little quote on the side that says, "Our community, our health, our voice." So it's a perfect time to be able to utilize those who will be affected most. Next. So while we're talking about learning our key decision makers or legislators and what their interests are and looking at some of their connections, you also want to understand the opposition, right? So unfortunately, opposition is going to take many forms, and it can be industry interests that oppose policies that impact their bottom line, or it can be key decision makers, their peers, that might oppose policy that they feel impacts their district one way or another. So some ways that you can identify your opposition, we just want to give some examples. Some are anti-tax groups, some are industry groups, and some are those that may not understand the role of structural racism. And so you want to figure out your opposition just as well as those decision makers, but figure out ways to counter that, right? So for anti-tax group, you can counter it by showing support from academics who study tax policy. For industry groups, you might show support from business leaders. And from those who just completely don't understand the role of structural racism, you can show support from communities most directly impacted by that issue and policy, as we just spoke about those individuals that could be in the community. So also identifying your opposition. Next. And so repeat as key decision makers change. As we know, when we have our election years coming up, make sure the same process that you follow is the same process you follow every time a decision maker changes. So policy campaigns, they're not straight lines. There are many steps along the way, and each with its own key decision makers influence to persuade. And so your bill sponsor is your legislative campaign. So choose wisely to set a strong foundation from that campaign. We all know knowledge is power every step of the way. So researching the pathways of influence, it can take a bit of time up front, but will save you a lot of time by helping you understand which tactics and strategies, messages, and messengers are most likely to succeed with the decision maker. So as they change, so will your research, but it'll all be worth it in the end. And I'm going to toss it back to Mara, who's going to give a little bit more information about grassroots identification.
Thanks, Laura. So once you know who your key lawmakers are, as Laura just explained, you'll need to find out a few things. Who are the key grassroots in their districts? Do we have a good sense of the community in those districts? What will we plan to do to build credibility with key decision makers, like voters, district businesses, and other civic organizations? We, of course, can't do this work everywhere, especially for national organization, but you have to think about your key districts and start looking there. Make it a priority to identify grassroots advocates from the key districts, including voters, businesses, nonprofits, and students. Sometimes students are overlooked, so that's important. So one way you can do this is you can survey all of your coalition partner organizations to see if they have contact lists of members and supporters, ideally with home address information that can easily be sorted by legislative district, and if they will allow these people to be contacted on behalf of your campaign. Within a Voices for Healthy Kids campaign, advocates actually start with a built-in base of grassroots advocates that they can mobilize through our Action Center and other tools. These advocates can be invited to join your efforts early on and often. You can continue to engage with them and keep them updated on issues. And we'll talk later about how to access this resource. Next. If your grassroots advocates lists are not extensive, which is the case sometimes, you need to plan campaign activities that will help you recruit grassroots advocates from these districts. So it won't happen overnight. This takes time, but even 5 to 10 grassroots advocates that are willing to call lawmakers will make a difference. Reach out to them, give them the power to do that, and help them have a voice in supporting your issue. Lawmakers will take notice and act on an issue when they hear from people, because hearing from constituents is really important to lawmakers. Next. Also think about using online tools to gather advocates. So web-based point and click tools, like the one you see on the right, are a great way to introduce people to grassroots advocacy and to learn about your issue. It lets you build lists around the issues you're working on. So when the time comes, you can reach back out to those advocates. You can keep them updated on a bill's status and progress, and you can help them take action on important milestones or changes during a campaign. It's really important for lawmakers to hear from constituents beyond online action. So you want to empower people to make phone calls, write letters, and even visit their lawmakers. We'll talk about how to do that shortly. Just 5 phone calls can make lawmakers pay attention and act on an issue. Your organization can use online networks to help identify grassroots advocates who live in those key districts, and then reach out to them to find those who are willing to take offline action through those phone calls, letter writings, and visits. Next. It's also really important to build a diverse grassroots base. You want that to include communities that are impacted by the proposed policy, like we talked about earlier. So if your organization isn't led by and represented by people who are in the Black, Latinx, Native American, or Asian communities, do the work to build meaningful and mutual collaborations with organizations that are. Your work to learn the priorities of a community and the history of structural racism and health inequity in a community will also help lay the groundwork for inclusive grassroots base building. Next. And sometimes early grassroots work actually has to be done with some deep, old-fashioned community organizing outreach and engagement. Not everybody is online, for example, and they don't want to respond to emails. They want to actually have high-touch experiences with you. So you want to make sure that this grassroots work to introduce the issue is more high-touch than high-tech. Sometimes the right people, we may be the right people to do community organizing, but sometimes we may not be. So it's okay to even provide funding when possible to other organizations that can lead on activity on behalf of the campaign. So for example, let's say there's a faith community or another community-based organization that could be funded to do the inviting and conversation leading, and then a campaign representative could just provide information. So think about building into your campaign plan, work to identify trusted intermediaries on the ground who can do some of the convening work for you. And remember that this does not have to be done in every state. Those key decision maker districts are where you're wanting to focus. Next. So once you've identified your grassroots advocates, it's important to know how to engage them. And the key to that engagement is understanding why your activists are invested in your issue and how they communicate. This is really important. You can understand that why you can help transform your advocates into leaders that you rely on to build relationships with decision makers. And they can basically be your spokespeople and convey your message to the media and share their personal stories. There are lots of ways to do this. You can send out an email and ask people to tell you why it's important to them to fight for whatever the issue is. You can ask them why the issue is important, and no matter what they respond, you always want to acknowledge their response. Thank them as soon as their response is sent. You can also do in-person events, set up a table, you can have postcards or a banner, or something that asks people to share their why. Always ask their name and home address when you can, because that's really valuable data that you'll need later. Let's just say you have a connection to a community organization like a Boys and Girls Club, a senior center, another faith community within a key district. Go ahead and ask the leaders if you could host a listening session and let them invite community members to share their ideas with you. You bring in healthy refreshments and keep it brief, but focus really on listening and paying attention to what people are sharing. And then follow up quickly afterward with the people who have ideas and experiences to make your case for the proposed change, and ask them if they're willing to share their story with others. Then take the time to interview them and get the story in writing in a way that they approve. You will need their permission to share it. And if you have a photo that you can use, that's also really powerful. Next. All right, Laura, over to you to talk more about key contacts identification.
Thank you, Mara. So yes, back to our contacts identification. So grassroots advocates are those who had a connection to elected officials because they are constituents, right? So hearing from constituents is important to lawmakers. So just a handful of letters or phone calls from grassroots advocates can make legislators take notice and act on an issue. Next. So your personal relationship profile, this is something that I like to kind of give a visual for. So I want you guys to utilize the chat when I just kind of finish giving a little bit of background of this personal relationship profile. So when identifying grassroots and key contacts from each decision maker's district, it's very much so a priority. So these influential people are those who already have relationships with key decision makers or who can build those relationships and who are willing to advocate on behalf of the campaign. And so personal relationships profile. So do coalition members know anyone within key decision maker spheres of influence, right? Do you know anyone that knows them? Can you access personal relationship profiles to find connections to decision makers' interests and their affiliations? And lastly, how will coalition partners reach out to these potential key contacts on behalf of the campaign? So for those of you who are doing this work and have been through campaigns, or if you are listening and you're about to start, I want to give 3 ways that I think of when you are working together, trying to identify a personal relationship profile. So I have one that says word of mouth, a mystery style, and a TMZ style. And so when I say these things, when you all are sitting with your coalition or you're sitting with your coworkers who are also on the campaign with you, when you all are identifying, okay, here's our key decision maker. Who knows this person? Who knows some of their affiliations? Do you all know someone that knows some of their interests? Do you do a word of mouth where you'll just figure out like, oh, okay, I found out that my colleague Mara, she knows about their affiliation to the Boys and Girls Club? Or do you do it mystery style where you will put your key decision maker at the top, and then you're trying to identify all of these people that say, okay, there's a line here, she knows this person, there's a line here, they're affiliated with this? Or do you do a TMZ style and just go desk to desk and say, hey, do you know this key decision maker? What do you know about them? Do you know some of their affiliations that we could possibly connect with on that personal relationship profile? So listening to those examples, if you've been through this and you've identified, just put in the chat some of the different ways that you've been able to identify some of your personal relationships. So I think that'll be interesting to see what you guys have come up with or what you've done in the past. Next slide. So we're talking about your coalition. So your coalition organizations are an asset. And while it's unlikely that the CEOs or executive directors of many of your most influential coalition partners are involved in your day-to-day work, they may be able to mobilize as grassroots advocates to reach out to lawmakers in support of your issue. So if you have a conversation with coalition members around making this ask of their CEOs to determine which of your coalition members, leaders may be willing to be able to reach out to lawmakers about your issues so that they are ready to be mobilized when needed. And hearing from leadership can draw attention to the issue as well. So keep that in mind when you're building out these coalitions. Next. Another important thing is I don't want to neglect is that updates and gratitude. So you want to keep grassroots and key contacts updated on the legislation. Advocates will stay more engaged and understand the process if they receive progressive updates. So just as much as you update everyone that's involved in your campaign, you want to make sure that you're updating those key contacts as well, because you've already asked them to be a part in some type of way. And always show gratitude. Thank advocates each time they take action or when something good happens. When I don't want to get too far, but of course I'm in media advocacy. So when we're looking at it from a media perspective, just saying thank you, even if it's publicly and you have someone that's in the community that's willing to be a part of your campaign or coalition or speak on their expertise because it's going to affect them, make sure you show gratitude. And if you want to highlight them, even on your social media pages, that's something that could go a very long way. You just want to treat every advocate like a long-term asset and not a short-term convenience. If you are an effective advocate, this will not be your last campaign, right? So how you treat and include everyone involved in your campaign will impact your future campaigns as well. So all advocates should be treated like valued members of the campaign. And that way, when you move to the next one, you all have already built a really, really good relationship and rapport. Okay, Mara?
Thanks, Laura. So let's talk more about, now you've done some of the heavy lifting, let's start talking about more of the fun part, which I think is mobilizing these people, your grassroots and key contacts or grass tops. So advocates are willing to call or meet with lawmakers, really appreciate being trained to learn more about the proposed policy change. It makes people feel confident and empowered. Sometimes people don't understand the political process, so it really behooves you to teach it to them and tell them how they can help. This can be done with a group that has been convened by coalition partners and community-based organizations. It can be done as part of lobby days, or you can even do it like we're doing today on a Zoom call or a conference call for a group of engaged advocates. Just make sure if you do something that you think about the people that you're asking to attend and work around their schedules and location. So for example, if you were going to convene a group of moms, you wouldn't necessarily want to have a meeting at school drop-off time. So again, just start by asking why they care about the issue or what their connection to the issue is. It's another opportunity to deepen their engagement with the campaign and then foster relationship building. Help them come up with their own elevator speech to help them make their case. We actually use a really cool tool called the 2793 rule, which we'll send this out to you after the call. It was created by some Vermont lawmakers a few years ago. And what it does is it requires you to make your persuasive point in no more than 27 words in a time frame that's no longer than 9 seconds with no more than 3 points discussed. These parameters really help the advocate focus on understanding how to connect to the listener. This message is not the place to present the entire appeal, just enough to hook the listener in wanting to hear more. So remember, trained advocates are a huge asset to your campaign, and they can help by meeting with lawmakers. As we talked about before, they can be spokespeople at public hearings. They can write letters to the editor, and they can also be really powerful social media influencers. I know with some of the campaigns that I've worked on, some of our greatest grassroots efforts have come from the social media efforts of our community members. Next. We also talked about online advocates, and the importance of moving them from online to offline action. That does take some personal outreach. So it helps when your emails and texts go out from a real person, make sure they can identify that person. It's actually a real person in your organization rather than just the name of your organization. This lets people feel connected later. So when that same person invites them to a community conversation or a lawmaker meeting, they are there in person and they can put a face with a name. It makes people feel very welcome and involved. And of course, if advocates share their personal story, make sure you thank them personally. This goes back to the gratitude piece that Laura mentioned. It's really important that you pick up the phone or send a handwritten note, at the very least an email. Personal stories are powerful. They're also very important, very personal. So it's important to acknowledge that. And you might have a lot of competing campaign demands. So taking the time to reach out to these advocates personally is really critical. They are very important to your campaign. One phone call or lawmaker meeting from your advocates is worth many, many emails. The campaign really needs to think about the grassroots advocates and who might be involved with the campaign, who could be best to help communicate with the grassroots advocates. If it's not the campaign manager, find someone else who can be that liaison to your advocates. Key contacts or grass tops may also benefit from the outreach by leaders of coalition organizations. So talk to your coalition and see who might be the best contact for leaders that you want to cultivate relationships with. Having personal contact with a campaign member or leader can help advocates, of course, because they're important and they want to feel important. Next. Talking again about personal stories, I just wanted to go a little more in depth here. And this really is such an effective way to advocate for a policy or systems change. Sharing those real stories illustrates the problems that you're trying to solve. Lawmakers, as you know, receive all sorts of data and facts from the campaign, but they need to connect with the issue on a human level to be convinced. They really want to feel something. Real people have a personal connection to the issue, and they're critically important to convince decision makers, the media, and voters in general that change is needed. So again, if you have grassroots advocates who are willing to share their personal stories and a connection to the issue, they can really help advance your campaign. Not everyone, of course, is going to feel comfortable doing this, and that's okay. But if you do have an opportunity to build relationships and trust, you'll probably find that more people are likely to share their personal stories. For those that are willing to share their personal connections, you can use a worksheet. We'll send this resource out as well, but it's called Telling Your Own Personal Story. This will help your advocates bring their story forward. Some people, again, might not feel comfortable speaking in public. That's okay. Some might just want to write it down or even have someone speak on their behalf at a committee hearing, for example. It's really up to them, but you can talk about the ways their stories can have an impact on the way lawmakers think. And remember, the stories is theirs, so you really need to ask permission before you share it in any way. Next. You also want to make things as easy as possible for advocates. So eliminate as many hurdles as possible to reach key decision makers. This is critical. You can help make it easier for grassroots and key contacts to reach out to decision makers by providing templates for the kind of outreach you want them to take. This can include providing the names, titles, email, and phone numbers of lawmakers. You can develop sample scripts for phone calls, emails, texts, and other things. You also want to educate your advocates about the proper ways to address lawmakers, because that varies depending on what role in government they play. And then provide them with the names of bills and bill numbers, as well as what the bill will accomplish. So they have as much information as possible to be informed and empowered. Having this at your advocates' fingertips will help them feel really confident and ready to engage. Next. Most people actually don't know who their state representative or city council member is, or even town meeting member. And sometimes that's hard. If you're involved, you don't see that. But you want to really make it easy for them to connect with and find their own lawmakers. So you can ask them, like I said earlier, for their home or voting address, and you can look it up for them. And there are also tools that our Voices team provides to help with this. But you want to make it a habit as much as possible, whether you're using online or offline tools, to ask for that home and voting address at community meetings and coalition meetings, because that's valuable data and it helps you connect your advocates with the right people. Make sure that your grassroots advocates and key contacts reaching out to key decision makers on behalf of your campaign have everything they need, like I said, to pick up the phone, including phone numbers, email addresses, and a script that they can use so they don't have to worry about what to say. We'll talk just in a few minutes about some of the resources we have to help with this. Next. Okay, mobilization. So this is really where your homework around the policy process in your area comes in. You will know the key milestones for your proposed legislation, and you'll be able to mobilize your grassroots and key contacts to reach out to key decision makers in support of a bill. Typically, we have grassroots advocates that focus only on their own lawmakers, but that's different when the bill is in committee because the committee is making decisions for the entire city or state, sometimes the country, and not just the district that they serve. So in those cases, you can invite all of your grassroots members to contact committee members to push the bill through the stage of the process, wherever it is. So make sure that you craft an email template or a call script for advocates to use, and consider asking advocates to make phone calls because these are really impactful. Emails work too, but I think I said this earlier, even 5 phone calls can feel like a lot of support for a bill in committee. There are people that work in offices that literally just keep track of how many calls and emails they're receiving on an issue, either pro or con. You should also ask your campaign partners and organizational supporters to reach out to their advocates too. So consider having their, as Laura mentioned, CEOs or executive directors make a personal call to committee members, committee chairs in particular. Hearing from the head of an organization can really go a long way in drawing attention to the issue. It kind of makes them stand up a little bit more. And the noise is what's important. So when we do our jobs well as grassroots and grass tops organizers and make the phone calls and we send emails and we literally blow up the systems for lawmakers, we're not just persuading them to do what we want, we're actually providing them with political cover so that they can stand up to their colleagues and others who might criticize their decision, and they can point to the number of people they have behind them supporting them. So when they can say, I had to take this vote because my phones are ringing off the hook, we've made it easy for them to do what we want and hard for them to ignore us. That's why volume matters. So think quantity and noise. Next. And then think about engaging around other campaign events. So look at other campaign related events where you can build grassroots power for your campaign. Look at these as events that you can use to mobilize or recruit grassroots and key contacts. If anything happens that is related to your campaign, then you can think about how this can be an opportunity to inspire advocates to take action or gain more advocates for your issue. So a couple of examples of this would be asking advocates to reach out to key decision makers or their own lawmakers. Let's say there's a media story that's been put out. Give them the link and have them share it with their lawmakers, or write a brief statement that explains why this proposed legislation would be beneficial to address the issue. You can ask them to share the story on social media and how it relates to the campaign. This is a great way to get the word out. And you can also contact community-based groups in the community that's featured to invite them and their advocates to learn more about the campaign if they're not already involved. Basically, everything that happens within a life cycle of a campaign can provide a good hook for recruiting, mobilizing, and energizing grassroots advocates. Don't just limit grassroots and grass tops to asking for votes. You want to think about the fact that they can do so much more, and keeping them engaged and informed is a great way to do that. Most often, if they're asked and coached, they will be your greatest spokespeople and influencers. Next. Also think about using feel-good moments like thank you emails or texts as opportunities to engage online advocates. So following on what Laura said earlier, an easy way to engage folks online is to urge them to thank a particular lawmaker or a business for doing something that improves community health. So people really do like to feel part of a feel-good moment, and the recipients of those messages are usually appreciative. So this might come in the form of tagging them on Facebook or Instagram or mentioning them on Twitter. So if a local corner store, for example, moves healthy food items from near the register and puts the junk food in a less visible place, thank them, send out a message on social media and let everybody know what they did. This really shores up community support, business community support, and educates your grassroots that their voices can make and really sustain change. Another idea would be to create contests or events for students that enlist local lawmakers or business members as participants and invite their parents. Parents love to see their kids up there. Think about hosting a poster contest with local schools and invite local lawmakers and business folks to be judges. Maybe the theme could be age appropriate with younger children, showing them what makes them feel good and strong, what foods are healthy, things like that. And older teens might do something edgier, like creating taglines or artwork to unsell unhealthy products. Another option would be to host a Meet Your Lawmaker event in the district or over Zoom. This one works very, very well. The lawmakers that I know often like to get back into the community and be able to talk to their neighbors and constituents. So hosting a meeting at a local organization or a park, the library, or on Zoom if needed, just gives them the opportunity to come face to face with lawmakers rather than be in their government office, which can be off-putting for constituents. It makes people more accessible to their grassroots advocates, and it changes the power dynamic. It really makes it easy for grassroots folks to meet their lawmakers face to face. Even if it's on Zoom, that's still a great way to make that connection. These are just some ideas. Get creative, think about your own communities and the kinds of events that people like to attend or the activities that they might want to engage in where you can bring lawmakers in and connect them to your grassroots. I apologize, my throat is getting very dry. Next, please. I wanted to just mention here, as I said earlier, that Voices for Healthy Kids can help with digital advocacy needs. We use a tool called Quorum, which used to be called Phone to Action, and it's an advocacy platform that helps campaigns connect advocates with lawmakers. So this is an amazing tool that I've used, and it allows you to contact lawmakers directly. You can connect advocates with their elected officials. You can create sign-up lists if you're trying to collect interest in a particular issue. You can create online petitions so you can get signatures and send those off to lawmakers. And it's also a way for you to connect your advocates to their lawmakers directly through a database that's available. You can also create specific action centers for an issue or a campaign that you're working on. Next. And Laura's going to talk a little bit more about other options that we offer.
Yes. So Voices for Healthy Kids, we seek to build the advocacy skills, capacity to advance equity, and influential relationships of the individuals, organizations, and communities that are working to make each day healthier for all children. And we do this by supporting strategic campaigns, training, and technical assistance. And as you can see at the top, no cost, free. So this is a free assistance. And what this assistance includes is capacity building for organizations. So we offer tools and resources connections to partner organizations, one-on-one coaching and trainings to organizations advocating for policies that impact expectant parents, infants, toddlers, kids, and their families. Each request starts a conversation, and you don't have to have all of the details ready. We'll get you connected to the right person and connect with us through the link in the chat box or on the slide. I see it says connect with us here. I want to make sure that that actually works. So you can either try that or we'll drop the link in the chat box. And we're excited to start talking with everybody. Next. So just to name a few, Voices for Healthy Kids, we offered the technical assistance in offline and online grassroots engagement, as well as training and capacity building. So these are helpful tools for coalition building work that you can tap into. And so as you can see, it's more than one. And so we have highlighted our own offline grassroots engagement and online grassroots engagement, training and capacity building. Next.
So just remember that grassroots cultivation and support takes work. So you're building power for your campaign in ways that will pay off in every aspect of campaign work. When grassroots advocates are given the tools and support that they need to thrive, they really do become key contacts, even sometimes become the grass tops advocates that we talked about early on. And before you know it, they've developed their own personal relationships with key decision makers through the opportunities that your campaign has provided. And that's a great outcome. I can speak personally to say that when I've had that opportunity and been trained on issues that were important to me that I wanted to advocate for, I really appreciated the time and tools and script writing and language that was given to me. So I knew how to move through the process to have policies changed. So one final thought I wanted to share, and it's an important one, is to keep in mind that grassroots advocates can become your very best sources of information about lawmakers too, because they can get away with asking questions that maybe your organization or a lobbyist you're working with might not dare to ask. So some of the questions they can ask would be things like, do you have any personal experience with, let's say, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, lack of access to safe drinking water, whatever the issue is that you're working on? You could ask them what, or advocates can ask what their favorite sources of news and information about health are. That's a great way for you to key into what they're reading and where they're getting their information. So as you're crafting your campaign messaging, you know how to influence some of that. They could also ask what their opinion is on the biggest challenge facing legislation and how they could overcome it, getting that inside knowledge about how to work the system, so to speak. Also ask maybe when they think about their districts, what are some of the biggest health equity challenges they see? Maybe they don't see any. That's good information to have. Just gathering as much information as possible is what your advocates can really help you with. So just think about that. Your advocates are just an incredible resource for your campaign. They can be your people on the ground with their ear to what's happening. They can be your greatest spokespeople. And it's truly a tremendous power to have when you've built out this grassroots network. Next. Great. Well, that's the end of our presentation. We do have a few minutes left, so I just wanted to quickly go through the chat and see if there's any questions. We can certainly open up as well. I just wanted to remind you as well, there's going to be a link added to the chat here in a minute, which is a post survey. It'll be a QR code or a link. And we're also going to send out a follow-up email. So if everyone could also please take that post webinar survey, that would help us out a lot. And while you're doing that, let's look at the comments here. Thank you everyone for being here today. Let's see what questions we have. Great. So everyone, I think just to recap, we have the 2793 rule about how you can create talking points for your advocates. That'll be sent out in the follow-up email. So look for that. That's a great way to frame those points for your advocates and to keep things succinct when they're talking to lawmakers. And Carrie, thank you for sharing your story. I'm going to read it if that's okay. We sometimes have to help people learn how to tell their stories without it being their life story, and one that is not re-traumatizing. That is really important. Here in Minnesota, we've been collaborating with an initiative called Great Start MN. One of our storytelling strategies have been asking our lawmakers to tell how unaffordable and inaccessible child's care has impacted them or people they know. We've recorded them telling their stories too. Our parents in our community and our lawmakers have a lot in common. That's a great point. And video testimonials or stories are extremely powerful. They're easy for people to consume. They can see the person telling the story. So that's great. Thank you for sharing that, Carrie. Okay. If there are no other questions, happy to open it up for a minute. Otherwise, we'll give you guys your 8 minutes back or 7 minutes back. And Carrie's also put a link in here for pluralpolicy.com. I don't know if anyone else is using that tool. Great. Thanks,
I
Liam.
just wanted to ask if where we would be able to find the recording.
Yeah, great question, Hillary. So that will actually be on our Voices website. If you go to the it'll be out in the next 24 hours, I believe. But if you go to voicesforhealthykids.org, in the top right, you'll see campaign resources and then trainings. All of our upcoming trainings, as well as our previously recorded trainings, are available to you there. And there will be a follow-up email as well, Hillary.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Great. Thanks, everybody. Really appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and give you back 6 minutes. Thanks.